Hello, my name is Valerie, and today I have a book review of The Maze Runner by James Dashner. So, The Maze Runner is a dystopian novel that is either soon to come out or has just come out as a movie. To be honest, it was actually the movie trailer that made me want to read the book because it looked really interesting and exciting, and I prefer to read the books before I see the movies that are based on those books. So, this book is about a boy named Thomas. He's a teenager. And at the very, very beginning of the book, it starts where he wakes up in an elevator and it's going up, and he doesn't remember anything about his personal life except for his first name. He remembers how the world works, he remembers electricity and sidewalks and schools, but he doesn't remember anything about his own personal life. And he has no idea why he is in this situation or where he is. So as a result, Thomas is very disoriented at the beginning of the book, and since we're seeing the book through Thomas's eyes, we are very disoriented as readers as well. So when Thomas gets to the top of the elevator shaft, he's greeted by a group of boys who are also teenagers and have found themselves in the same situation over the past 2 years, where they don't have any memories of their personal lives and have woken up in that elevator shaft and found themselves in what they've decided to call the Glade. The Glade is a large clearing in the middle of an enormous maze. Unfortunately, these teenage boys who have found themselves in this situation have had to form some kind of life there. Each boy is assigned a job by the boys who have been designated as the leaders of the group. Some of the jobs include cleaning, preparing meals, security, and also what they call maze runners. The maze runner's job is to go out and explore the maze, which, as you can imagine, since they've been there for 2 years, has not been very successful thus far. Now, it appears though that with Thomas's arrival, and subsequent events that I won't tell you about because of spoilers, that things are going to change. And that's all I will give you as far as a plot synopsis, because I don't want to give away too much. As I mentioned at the beginning of the book, it's very disorienting as a reader because the boys in the Glade that are already there use a lot of slang that they've come up with that makes absolutely no sense if you don't know what they're talking about. So they're just throwing words around, and again, I think it works because it helps you to feel almost as confused as Thomas is. I mean, you haven't had your memory wiped, but it gives you an idea of he has no idea what they're talking about. You have no idea what they're talking about. One thing that I thought was very frustrating, though, that I wasn't sure was entirely realistic, is that the boys are not very helpful to Thomas at the beginning. I mean, if I were one of the boys that had been in that situation before, I would think, I've been there, I know how confused this guy is, let me sit him down and try my best to explain what is going on so that he isn't completely freaking out. But they kind of just say, don't ask any more questions, we'll explain it when we feel like it. Overall, I did really enjoy this book. It's definitely a page turner. Pretty much the end of each chapter is a cliffhanger or somehow has some kind of revelatory information. One thing I did think was very interesting about the book was the exploration of memory loss. Since we see the book from Thomas's point of view, we get to see his thoughts as well. And it's very confusing to him, understandably, to remember how life works but not know where he's from or who he is. And it's strange to try and think of what you would be like if you didn't remember your personal life, because I feel like we base a lot of what we do and who we are as people on where we've been and the people we know and what we do in our lives every day. And without that information, it would be very hard to come to terms with a new life or to figure out who you even are and what kind of person you are. So I thought that was a very interesting aspect of the book. As I mentioned, it was also very exciting with the cliffhangers at the end of every chapter and not being entirely sure what was going to happen next. Unfortunately, I would say I did not enjoy this quite as much as I enjoyed the Hunger Games series, and maybe not even as much as the Divergent series. I did enjoy it, but the one thing that stuck out for me is that it was a little bit more predictable, at least for me. There were at least two things that happened in the book, two events that I completely called, a third of the way into the book. So that was a little disappointing. I didn't quite know the route they were going to take to get to those events, so that part was interesting, but seeing that that was where it ended up was a bit disappointing. I thought the ending of the book was not my favorite either, just because it didn't really give you very many answers, and that's not always a bad thing. It's good for a book to leave you with some questions, especially when it has a sequel, so you know that there's more information coming. Maybe that was the point. Maybe that was James Dashner's evil plan to get me to read The Scorched Trials, which is the sequel. If that was his evil plan, it has succeeded. I'm curious to see where this series goes with the sequel, just because I thought that the premise that they seem to be setting up at the end of this book, granted, most dystopians don't entirely seem believable, but it seemed to stretch beyond belief, even more so than some other dystopians. I still don't understand the purpose of all of this. So overall, though, I did enjoy it. I would recommend it if you like dystopian novels particularly. I did give it 4 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. So if you like dystopians, check this one out before you see the movie. So if you liked this video, feel free to subscribe to my channel. I do plan to film more book reviews and other fun book-related videos in the near future, so stay tuned for those.